and welcome to the mother of all Oddity Archive history lessons. So big that I'm gonna have to launch yet another occasionally recurring subseries just to get through it all. I've been covering the history of home video on this show for several years now, but I think it's getting to be time to tackle the big one. You know what I'm talking about. Video Home System, or VHS. And I've still got other formats to cover, but let's at least get this one started. So today I want to tackle those early years where home video, just in general, was still more of a geek thing as opposed to an everyday appliance, if you will. So today we're going to cover from the inception of what became VHS circa 1971 up through the rise of the video rental club right around the end of the decade. Yeah. Grab your polyester and bell bottoms, kids. In October of 1969, Sony unveiled the prototype for a new video cassette, as opposed to open-reel videotape. The following year, Sony and JVC, the latter then parented by Matsushita, with minor input from 3M, Ampex, and a few others, joined forces to standardize the video cassette. Sony and JVC, the Japanese companies, especially took an interest, as technicians and even the Japanese government were calling for a standardized video format, in every sense of the word. The result was the 3/4-inch U-matic format, released in the fall of 1971. Problem was, while certainly more manageable than professional 1 and 2-inch tape, it was still very large, very expensive, was incapable of being easily hooked up to most consumer TVs, and was incapable of holding more than, at the time at least, 1 hour of material. Worse yet, Sony owned much of the design of the VCRs themselves.
This videotape demonstration has been recorded on the Sony Color video cassette and is being played by the Sony Color video cassette system.
Frustrated by U-matic's inaccessibility, not to mention Sony's relative grip on the technology, by the end of 1971, JVC engineers Shizo Takano and Yuma Shiraishi laid out what was known as the Video Development Matrix, which was a list of 12 requirements for a consumer-grade video cassette and VCR. Those were, number 1, it had to be compatible with any consumer-grade TV. Number 2, picture quality had to be reasonably close to off-air quality. Number 3, it needed a minimum 2-hour recording capacity. Number 4, tapes must be interchangeable between machines, unlike, say, the Sony CV series. Number 5, it needed to be versatile enough to record off-air and be able to be used in tandem with a video camera. Number 6, players and tapes should be affordable enough to appeal to regular consumers. Number 7, the VCRs needed to be user-friendly. Number 8, the VCRs needed to have low maintenance costs. Number 9, the technology must be capable of mass manufacture. Number 10, parts must be interchangeable. Number 11, decks must be easily serviceable. And number 12, being able to recognize the potential social and political implications of such democratic technology. Bear in mind, the Information Society concept had been launched in 1962, and its, if you will, manifesto had more recently found its way to Japan. Almost as soon as Takano and Shiraishi started work on their new format, the brass at JVC got cold feet about taking another crack at a new video format so soon, and shelved the project. However, despite major departmental budget cuts and a reduced team of engineers, Takano and Shiraishi soldiered on with their project after hours. Over the course of 1973, the pair cranked out 4 prototypes of their new video home system, the last arriving just in time for a visit from the head of Matsushita, Mr. Matsushita himself. Matsushita liked what he saw and resumed funding for the project. This is especially noteworthy as at the time, Matsushita was considering backing Sony's still experimental Betamax format. B, like with U-matic, the Japanese Ministry of International Trade and Industry was pressuring manufacturers into settling on one consumer video format, this time Betamax. And C, VHS was to be an open standard. In other words, effectively anyone could manufacture it. Having said that, there were still bugs to be worked out with VHS, which held off its introduction until 1976.
Oh, and you've missed your football on TV.
Anything for you, Mum.
Oh, you are a good boy.
Bye.
When you have a Philips television recorder, you don't have to miss anything.
Starting back in 1972, other companies had been rush releasing their own stabs at a consumer-grade videocassette format. Over in Europe, Philips had already released their VCR, videocassette recording, format. In the US, Avco, in tandem with Sears department stores, had released Cartravision. Both of these formats relied on chunky, stacked reel cassettes, and thanks to the tension issues of such things, were prone to failure. Cartravision fared especially poorly, as it could only be purchased in tandem with a new TV, recorded in poor skip field quality, read it recorded only every third frame of video, and cost almost as much as a new economy car at the time.
Cartridge television, you can record programs even when you're not at home, or when you're sleeping. It has a timer you can set to catch shows as far ahead as 8 hours.
In 1974, BASF, or BASF, announced a consumer longitudinal video recorder, LVR, whose tape ran along a stationary as opposed to rotating head, though this format was never released. That same year, Sanyo introduced their V-Chord format, which looked like an 8-track on steroids. In 1975, Panasonic, Matsushita, preempted its own forthcoming format with the Philips VCR-esque VX format, aka the Quasar Great Time Machine. And speaking of Philips, around the same time, they started work on their eventual Europe-only V2000 format. And for the coup de grace, Sony got their Betamax format out the door in May of 1975 in Japan, November of 75 in the US. Though, even that was a bit rushed. The first, and for a while, only Betamax model, like Cartravision before it, was only available as part of a full TV console. Sony got their first standalone Betamax, the SL7200, out the door in February of 1976, which was effectively just the VCR proper extracted from the console unit.
Only by the limits of your imagination.
On September 9, 1976, JVC Brass unveiled the Video Home System, or VHS, at the Hotel Akura in Tokyo. As a side note, I should mention that Video Home System has always been what VHS stands for, and not vertical helical scan. VHS wasn't strictly vertical, and the helical scan patent belonged to Ampex. Sorry, internet pedants. But I digress. The first VHS VCR, the JVC HR3300, went on sale on October 31st, only in the Akihabara Station area of Tokyo. Depending on your source, the HR3300 may have found its way to the US as early as January of 1977, but given that it was given an unveiling at the Summer Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago in early June, it was probably that summer when it was released. In August, RCA unveiled their first VHS unit, this one with a long play option, allowing for up to 4 hours of potential recording time. These went on sale in October and were the first RCA video product released to use the Selectavision name. And while I can't find anything concrete, it appears that VHS didn't find its way to Europe until at least early 1978.
Easily to the antenna terminals of any television set, whether it be black and white or color. And you can do it all by yourself.
Before I begin, a little disclaimer. During the 1977 to 80 time period, the history of VHS and Betamax overlap considerably. Out of necessity, the remainder of today's episode will mostly apply to both VHS and Betamax. Okay, let's roll on. While Cartravision was the first format to have pre-recorded media available for sale, or in the case of major movies, rental, the notion of pre-recorded home video really didn't come to fruition until the rise of Betamax and VHS. However, as of my making this, the history remains largely speculative. Here's my best stab at piecing this one together. I think we can safely say that the first pre-recorded VHS and Betamax tapes were bootlegs, and it appears that the first ones may very well have been adult films. Now, I've read anecdotally that the first movie officially released on VHS, Japan only, was the 1972 South Korean film The Young Teacher, issued in 1976. I have yet to find any proof of this tape's existence. Now, the first legitimately released Betamax tapes were released in the latter half of 1976. A few Russ Meyer movies and some assorted pornographic titles, only available through mail order at $300 a piece. Logic would dictate that VHS was added to the mix the following year, but I can't confirm that. On the bootleg front, there are a precious few, mostly Betamax, surviving copies of major mainstream films circulating around that date to 1977, like this rather ballsy copy of Fantasia. I've also read in the book From Betamax to Blockbuster that in 1977, some enterprising record store owners and music industry folks were impatient for officially released movies on VHS, or Beta for that matter, so they went the public domain route. However, the earliest public domain tapes I found come from Video or Sound Unlimited and The Nostalgia Merchant, which also licensed some films, but these date to 1978. So, by process of elimination, the earliest known, as of my making this, legitimate VHS releases come by way of Magnetic Video, which launched with a line of 50 pre-1973 20th Century Fox titles on November 17, 1977, all available on VHS and Beta, with titles starting at $50.
With Selectavision, you can go to the movies at your house.
Buy now during the RCA Film Festival and get 2 free movies and discount coupons for 5 more.
Convincing people to shell out a minimum of $50 per tape was not an easy one. As such, Magnetic Video tried 2 methods of gaining traction. One was a deal with RCA to throw in a Magnetic Video title with each Selectavision VCR sold. Later in 1978, this got bumped up to 2 free titles, plus a few coupons for discounts on more releases. Sony would not allow this kind of promotion with Betamax. Magnetic Video's other, more famous stab at establishing pre-recorded tapes is that, knowing there'd be initially very few brick-and-mortar stores to carry their tapes, they set about establishing a mail-order video sales club, namely the Video Club of America, which launched just in time for the 1977 Christmas season, advertising in the November 26th issue of TV Guide. It cost $10 to join and $49.95 per tape. One of the people that saw the TV Guide ad was one George Atkinson, who owned a mildly successful Super 8 film rental business in Los Angeles. In addition to film, Atkinson was already renting out U-matic duplicates of his public domain titles. Expanding into VHS and Betamax only seemed like the logical next step. However, Atkinson wound up bypassing magnetic video by way of a local electronics store that would sell him one copy apiece of each magnetic title on VHS and Beta for only $3 over wholesale. $3,000 later, Atkinson began renting them out. To stave off any losses, Atkinson made customers join his club for a $50 for a year or $100 one-time only fee, plus $10 a night per tape. While you'd think this wouldn't fare too well in 1977-78, it proved to be a goldmine. Sensing a good deal, similar stores sprang up in major cities across America, some requiring full-blown background checks before you could join the club. By 1979, Paramount Pictures sat up and took notice of the video club trend. Wanting to treat video rental like they would a film print of a movie, the company hooked up with Fotomat, the once prominent photo developing kiosks. Providing Fotomat with custom short-run VHS and Beta copies of selected titles, Fotomat became the first significant video rental store, one that didn't require you to join a club. Rentals averaged around $12 for a 5-day period, a bargain for the time. By 1980, the selection expanded to include Disney and Warner Brothers titles. Around this time, the studios started allowing purchases of these tapes, starting at only $40, but usually wound up closer to $70. Having said that, there were 3 significant flaws in the Fotomat plan. One, you had to call ahead for your video, which, assuming one was available nearby, would be ready for pickup the following day. Number 2, Fotomat tapes were encoded with stop copy protection. In short, some of the levels on the tape were intentionally weak, causing some TVs and VCRs to lose grip on the vertical hold, causing a rolling picture. And number 3, video rental clubs weren't bound by individual studios. They could and did stock whatever they wanted. Fotomat stopped renting tapes in 1982. VHS runs just a teeny bit deeper than you thought it would, doesn't it? So, by my estimation, it's gonna take 4, possibly 5 episodes to get through the history of VHS and its offshoots. And I don't know when I'm going to do Volume 2. I definitely don't want to do these all in a row. I think that would become just a bit deadening, both for me to make and for you to watch. So just know that I will get to it. But otherwise, that's it for today's archive. Join me next time when I'm confronted by some lunatic who is convinced that I'm a total idiot because he knows that he taped news coverage of the Cuban Missile Crisis on VHS in 1962.
No other video cassette recorder delivers more. RCA's Select Division. A new video cassette recorder with remote pause. With 4-hour capability. And with a built-in timer and a camera.
What a rebate. What a deal. What a steal.